Reading with your kids.
Hola, ni hao, konnichiwa, assalamu alaikum, shalom, mahaba, moni muli wanji, namaste, jambo, bienvenidos. Hi, my name is Jedley, and this is the Reading with Your Kids podcast, an iHeartRadio Best Kids and Family Podcast Award nominee. We're coming to you from the beautiful neighborhood of Reedville in the southwest corner of Boston, Massachusetts. We are so delighted that you're joining us in our mission to help families grow closer through reading. Ricardo Gattas Moras will be here to celebrate the rainbow bee and families. And later on, a 14-year-old author known as Desmond Is Amazing will be here to celebrate Be Amazing, a history of pride. Before we invite our guests into the studio, we would love to invite you to visit our website, readingwithyourkids.com. Sign up for our free newsletter. We'd also love for you to connect with us on social media, facebook.com/readingwithyourkids, at Jedley Magic on Twitter, at readingwithyourkids on Instagram. And of course, we would really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the show on the iHeartRadio app, on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, Spotify, Ghana, Himalaya, wherever you find your podcast. Joining us right now from Austin in Texas, our guest tonight is the co-author of a beautiful picture book called The Rainbow Bee. Please welcome to the podcast, Ricardo Gattas Moras. Ricardo, welcome to the Reading with Your Kids podcast.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Really happy to have you on. This seems like a really neat book. I was reading the book blurb, and I just love the premise. Tell us all about The Rainbow Bee, please.
Yeah, thank you for asking. The Rainbow Bee, it's a book that my husband and I co-wrote with the intention of introducing that conversation around diversity, inclusion, and even vulnerability, right? As we started researching what were the best ways for us to introduce this, we found that the very first thing that you want to do is start talking the vocabulary, and introducing, words and stories that can help kids understand what diversity and inclusion is. Then you start modeling behaviors, and then you kind of combine both of those, right? So the intention on the book, the story of the Rainbow Bee, it's a bee who is born with rainbow stripes instead of the yellow and black that the rest of the hive has. So it found itself having a hard time understanding, the belonging, how it belongs with the hive. So the queen gets in the middle of the premise and starts figuring out what are some of the ways that we can understand how differences can make us unique. And then at the end, the hive ultimately realizes that the differences that we have don't have to set us apart, because there's a lot more that brings us together that brings us apart. So, yeah.
Yeah, interesting. You mentioned that one of the ways to start talking to kids about the issues of diversity and inclusion are using the words in the vocabulary. What kind of words are we talking about?
Yeah, we're thinking about words like, differences. We're talking about words like, race, ethnicity. We are talking about, language in itself. So think language like that. Now, the book in itself does not address the language. But what we thought it was important was that we started introducing stories that talked about diversity and inclusion, and that's what the book does. So, through our research, though, when we were looking and seeing what were some of the best ways of introducing that kind of language, is what helps kids, be able to understand that better. But the book in itself talks about a story of somebody who was not included and learns to be included because of its differences and uniqueness.
Yeah. And I think as you're talking, one of the things that came to my mind, we talk a lot about the fact that, we need to help our kids understand that people that look different than you are people, and they can be great friends, and they deserve our love and our respect. People who speak different languages, people who come from different cultures, lead different lifestyles. All these people are to be valued, respected, and loved. I think one of the things that we don't often hear about books is helping the kids who find themselves in situations where they look different, to help them understand that they're valued and that they're loved and that they need to love themselves, and the fact that they don't look like everybody else, that's okay.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And, it's not just about understanding that they look different, but also I think it's about understanding that there are differences everywhere you go, and that those differences, while what they may make you unique, they also have history behind it too, right? So like somebody looking different doesn't just make them look different, but they also have to struggle with different things. They may be looked at different. They may be treated differently. So it's not just about the way that we look and the differences that may be visible, but it's about also the different experiences that those groups may be going through as well, or may go through as well. That kids need to understand. Because simply being surrounded by the differences doesn't do enough, right? You need to talk about why diversity is important and why including diversity to a perspective is important too.
You mentioned the word vulnerability when we first started speaking. You talked about inclusion, diversity, and vulnerability. Can you expand a little bit more about that? Yeah.
So, vulnerability has been a word that I think a lot of people talk about, but not a lot of people are willing to always be vulnerable, because it takes a lot of courage, right? Ironically, to be vulnerable and to show yourself and to take off the armor. So when we include vulnerability in the book, there's a point in the story where the hive realizes that doubting that the rainbow bee was good enough for the hive was not the right thing to do, and that we learned that embracing differences is okay, and that we need to respect each other for who we are in the inside more than from, what it looks like in the outside. So, there's a point in time in the story where the hive apologizes, recognizes that they made a mistake by making assumptions, and they're able to move forward from that too.
Yeah. We've talked a lot here on the podcast about encouraging our kids to allow themselves to feel vulnerable. It was something that it took me almost 100 years to learn, but it's when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, it really opens up a lot of opportunities to us, and it opens ourselves up to a lot of friendships that we probably otherwise wouldn't have experienced.
Yeah. Through my life, I've realized that to make a real connection with somebody, you have to be willing to be vulnerable and to speak about the things that, may make you a little uncomfortable, may make you, may give someone else the ability to maybe use it against you, right? Almost. But it's that trust that you put in people that creates that bond, and it opens them up for them to do the same for you, right? And that's how we, start moving forward. There's a lot of superficial conversations that happen, I think, at work in a day to day. And those are great. Those get you day to day, but to create a true relationship, a true bond, then vulnerability needs to be a part of that. And that includes maybe saying, I love you first. Maybe, saying, I'm sorry for, what I did was not correct, recognizing your mistakes and being able to just, be human, right? Mm-hmm. Show that humanity, it's okay.
Yeah. That, we've talked so much about the fact that a lot of the racism and strife that we're experiencing right now comes from fear. And when we allow ourselves to be vulnerable, then we don't have our defenses up, and I don't think we're as fearful.
I think it does come from fear, but it's not always fear on the people, right? I think it's fear on what it means to us, and on being wrong too, or define what you grew up thinking was the right thing to do, and thinking that you may have to change, or what you grew up thinking may not be correct. I think that it includes that fear as well.
Mm-hmm. Now, did you and your husband always dream of writing children's books?
We did not actually. It happened out of, I wouldn't say coincidence, but it happened as a result of multiple ideas. Through my work, I got an opportunity to go and visit a summit that's called One Young World Summit, and they talk a lot about just starting where your heart is. Like wherever you want to do for the world, start where your heart is. Like take that first step and don't worry about saving the entire world, but worry about the cause that you care the most about. So, for me, it was climate protection and also LGBTQ plus rights, right? With my husband and I starting a family, those are two things that were really important to me. So as a result of that, the rainbow bee came about, and we were like, oh, well, like a rainbow who's a little bit different. It's got the rainbow stripes, and it's also a bee. So bees are an important source of our food, or an important food source for the environment. So, we need to create some awareness. But we didn't know what we were going to do. We thought maybe an organization, maybe some products, maybe God knows what it was going to be. And then as we started reading to our son and we started noticing how much he paid attention, then that's when we realized that the type of books that we introduced to him were important. And as we were discussing the idea of doing something about it, we said, well, why don't we just write the book? And why don't we use the rainbow bee to write the book? And that's just kind of how it came about. And yeah, I mean, our son inspired us to go through that process. But before that, I don't think I had ever thought about writing a book or a children's book for that matter.
So neat. So what kind of plans do you have for the Rainbow Bee? Are we going to have a series of books? Are we going to have Rainbow Bee honey available?
Well, I'm laughing because we've considered that. So it's not too off the table, but look, it's like I said, when we started it started out as something that we wanted to do to like create something for our son. Then we realized that the message would be important for us to bring it to the world, and we've had a lot of great responses from it, and a lot of great reviews, a lot of people who reached out to us and said thank you for the story. So it definitely has made us think of what's the next step. The first thing that's come to mind is we're actually recently presented with the potential of growing our family once again. So we may be going through another process of adoption, still like, in the process of figuring that out. But then we thought, could Rainbow Bee get a sibling, right? And could the sibling, have a different flag, as the color? So that's one thought. We also recently partnered with the Bee Girl organization, which is an organization that educates children on the importance of bees and also helps their ecosystem stay alive. So we've got these pins that we sell on our site that every time that you purchase one, 50% of the profits go to the organization. So we're trying to find ways of giving back. And then we've had a lot of discussions around potential products. People like the character, think it's really adorable, and they've asked us, would you put it on a shirt? Would you put it in a cup? And just different ideas, but I don't know if we've defined one yet. So, but in the process.
This is Pride Month, and I have to tell you, like I mentioned before, I'm almost 100 years old, and I've seen a lot of changes in society, a lot of great changes. And the fact that you and your husband are able to have a family and adopt kids is one of those changes. I had an experience at one of my educational magic shows where a student stood up in front of the audience and I had asked the kids to think about what they're thankful for, and he stood up and said, "Gently, you don't know me, but I've been a foster kid all my life, and yesterday I was adopted by two men, and for the first time in my life, I have a family." And it was such a beautiful moment that child was so overwhelmed and so happy. And that wouldn't have that happened probably 8 years ago, that child stood up at that assembly. But that wouldn't have happened when I was a kid. And so I'm really happy that we've changed, but we still have a lot to do. As we're here in Pride Month 2021. What kind of changes would you hope we can make so that the world is better for your son?
Well, first of all, I almost cried when you told that story. So thank you, Jed, for sharing that. What a beautiful story to hear. And I'm sure you weren't expecting it. So you received it just as emotionally as I did. But look, Pride Month is, it's funny because I think of Pride Month in so many different ways. Number one, it's a lot of people consider it a celebration, right? But it wasn't always a celebration. It started out as riots. It started out as a fight for equality. It started out for, asking to be treated just like any other human being. And that's going back to, I think the first Pride Parade happened in 1970. 1969 is when the riot first occurred. So when we think back to that time and where we are now, I mean, the miles that we've gone, right? And the progress that we've made. But Pride is about coming back to where it started and saying there's a lot of work that's been done, but the work is not over, right? There are still countries that consider LGBTQ plus people to be, against the law, or to have a relationship that's considered same-sex relationship to be against the law. Some of them even still consider it to be something bad enough to consider a death penalty. Some of our laws in our country still don't fully protect all LGBTQ people, especially when you start getting down to, the L's and the G's. Lesbians and gays are probably the ones that most people are comfortable with speaking about. When you start talking about our trans brothers and sisters, you start talking about our queer family, non-binary, intersex. So once you start getting into some of those additional details, there are still a lot of progress that still needs to be made. And I would say Pride, it's a reminder that the work still needs to be done. And, we can't get it done without allies, without people that are supporting the community. So there are three things that I often advise people. Number one, educate yourself in the ways that you can help, but also the history of why these actions are needed, right? And why it's important for you to help. Second thing is do what you can to create environments around you that are inclusive. And that can be just as simple as, instead of me saying, how's your husband or wife, you can ask, how's your partner? And then you let the other person answer accordingly, or asking for your pronouns, right? And introducing yourself with pronouns and asking people for pronouns. So those type of moments make such a difference for somebody who's in fear of whether they're going to be accepted or not. And then the last one is come out. Come out as an ally if you happen to be an ally and you want people to know, because when doing something as simple as putting a pride flag outside of your office, for those that are maybe still going to an office, or outside of your home, that in itself lets somebody know, I care about you. I know that you're going through struggles, and it's okay. This is a safe place. It's just simple actions that help. So, I would say that's a good place to begin. The other piece is, understand who you're voting for, and do your research and make sure that the people you're voting for support the causes that you care about, because, there's obviously differences of opinion for some.
Mm-hmm. Hey, this has been really eye-opening. Can you tell everybody where they can go to find out more about the Rainbow Bee and see this cute little character that might be on T-shirts or on products someday?
Sure. You can check it out on our website at therainbowbeebook.com. The book is also available on Amazon. It's available on Barnes & Noble, Target online, Walmart, and it's like 50 different bookstores. So, Google the Rainbow Bee Book, go to Amazon. Certainly our website is probably the best place to start. You'll get to learn a little bit more about our history and about a few other things that we have going on with the book. So, therainbowbeebook.com.
Yeah. And we love to encourage people to go out and support their small local bookshops. So you can pick up the phone and give them a call and say, do you have the Rainbow Bee? And if they say no, then the next thing would be to ask them, could you get it for me, please? And it'll be there in a couple of days.
100%. Yeah. We are more than happy to, help any of our local bookstores get it stocked. And, we actually have a couple of boutiques who have stocked it in Texas. But certainly if there's a bookstore that you prefer near you, reach out to them. It is available on Ingram's Park, so most bookstores can order it.
Awesome. We've had a great time speaking about the Rainbow Bee with our guest, Ricardo Gattas Moras. Hey, Ricardo, thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation.
We hope you enjoyed our chat with Ricardo. Check out the Rainbow Bee. Right now, get ready. We're about to meet Desmond Is Amazing. Joining us right now from New York City in New York. I'm really excited. Our guest today is the author of Be Amazing, A History of Pride. Please welcome to my show my amazing guest, Desmond Is Amazing. Desmond, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty wonderful. I'm really excited to have you on. Can you tell us what Be Amazing is all about?
All right. So Be Amazing is a book about the history of pride. Sorry about my birds. It's about the history of pride and also my path to discovering myself. And it's just basically history of the LGBTQ rights simplified for kids.
This is a big challenge that you took on. This is an important discussion that a lot of people are having. It's an important discussion that a lot of people are having trouble having. And it's a rather difficult history. And for somebody, it's okay that I let people know that you're almost 14.
Mm-hmm.
So for you to take that on at such a young age, that, like I said, that's a big challenge. What inspired you to take on this challenge?
Well, you know how there's all these books about, a boy in a dress?
Mm-hmm.
Well, there's none about, the rights of, how that boy's able to wear a dress. So that's why I wanted to make the book, because there weren't really any books about the LGBTQ history simplified down for kids.
So, Derek, can you tell us a little bit of the history that you are sharing with kids in the book?
Well, it all started at Stonewall in 1969 when the police started raiding Stonewall Inn, which was one of the only safe places for LGBTQ people in New York City. And the LGBTQ community fought back, and then the next year we had a pride parade, and that's when the movement started getting our rights.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you look back, because that happened before you were here in this world, as you look back on that, can you imagine what it would have been like growing up as a member of that community at that time?
Well, I feel like it would be very difficult. So give them a round of applause, because it was very hard for them back then.
Yeah, absolutely. It was. And it's still hard today. Talk a little bit. You're almost 14, and you are out. You were a proud member of the community. Where did you find the courage to kind of come out and let the world know who you were?
Well, I've always been a very outspoken person. I'm always just like, hi, how are you? I like being, noticed. I like, having people notice me. So I wanted to, make a change. So I had that courage, and I just went along with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In your book, you're talking to kids about understanding who they are and to embrace their amazingness. That's hard for a lot of kids, no matter where they are in their life, no matter who they see themselves being.
Yeah.
Why do you think it's so hard for kids in that teen age to kind of accept themselves?
Well, there's a lot of social pressure. I have insecurities like that too. There's a lot of social pressure. It's kind of natural. There's expectations nowadays with social media. So I just feel like those are the biggest reasons why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And another message that you have in the book is one of acceptance, not only accepting yourself, but accepting people who are different. What we talk to parents here on the show. What message do you want to share with parents? What do you want them to be teaching their kids?
Well, to support the LGBTQ community, support others for who they are, support others' opinions, even if you don't agree with their opinion, as long as it's not harmful, and love your kid for who you are, because if you're not going to, love your kid for who they are, then maybe you shouldn't have a kid.
I love that. That's one of the messages that we share here on the podcast a lot is it doesn't matter if you agree or you disagree, or if you hold religious or traditional views that are different. The one thing that we need to remember as adults, one thing that we need to teach our kids, is to be respectful of everybody, that everybody deserves to be loved and respected.
Yeah.
Yeah. Who are the people we're going to meet in Be Amazing, A History of Pride?
Well, there's going to be several people, but the main people are Marsha P. Johnson and Sylvia Rivera.
Can you tell us a little bit about those folks?
Of course. So they're both transgender, and they were both part of the Stonewall riots. Sadly, they're both dead. Marsha was supposedly killed herself, but she killed herself in the 90s. And Sylvia died of cancer in the 2000s, and they were, very outspoken. They started, the first, safe space for transgender people. And Marsha was a very kind person. She didn't really have a home, but even though she didn't have a home, she would, give money to others. So that's why it was important to include her in the book, because she just gave off an amazing kindness, and Sylvia was her best friend, and Sylvia is a very good representation for the transgender community.
When I asked you to tell us about them, your eyes really lit up. You have a lot of pride for these folks. You seem to they're real role models and heroes for you.
Yeah, they are. They're very important. They're very important people to recognize and not forget about.
One of the things I noticed on your website is you gave a lot of praise to your illustrator.
Yes, Dylan Glenn.
Can you talk a little bit about working with Dylan?
Yes, it was amazing because you see the artwork. I want it to be very colorful, very kid friendly. I don't want it to look a little too mature. I want it to look like it's fun. So we hired him to do the drawing plan. I think it turned out better than I thought it would ever turn out. So I'm very happy.
I also understand that you recently released a music video and a single. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yes, I released We Are Amazing. And it was a very, I made in 2018, 2017. Well, no, 2018. And we lost, my management company, I don't know, it's a bunch of stuff I don't know about because my mom handled it. We weren't able to release it till April, and I'm glad that it got released because I love it so much. And I love the song so much.
It is a really cool song. The video is really great too, and you feature a lot of different kids from all different walks of life. Were they all friends of yours, or were these folks that you went out and found?
They were all fans. I basically had my fans, sign up for the video, and they would do it. And yeah, I got so many submissions, and I was glad I was able to fit them all in because it was amazing. I mean, even the adults, the work that they did, some people got in drag, someone was in a mermaid suit. It was just very awesome.
Yeah, it really is fun. I'm wondering, Desmond, have you taken time to sit down and think about the fact that there are going to be kids, thousands of kids all around the world reading this book, finding inspiration from this book? Have you thought about that? And if you have, how does that make you feel?
I have thought about that, and it just makes me feel wow, it makes me feel good about myself because, I'm helping other kids, find their true selves. And I want to spread positivity, the world's not all positive and stuff, but, I want, kids to learn how to be positive in moments where, negativity is present.
Mm-hmm. Where do you think that negativity comes from, in a school or, neighborhood setting?
Well, I feel it's honestly just beliefs, or it's just natural to, spread negative, things. And I mean, I just feel it's, peer pressure or just religions or where you grew up. And I don't want people to worry about, what other people think. I want you to be yourself and love yourself for who you are.
So important to love yourself for who you are.
Yeah.
That is the person you are meant to be. I'm really excited. Have you had a lot of folks reacting to the book so far?
Yes, I've had a lot of videos on Instagram of kids reading the book, and it's so adorable, and they love it so much.
Well, we really love the fact that you spent this time with us today. Desmond, tell everybody where they can go online to find out more of Be Amazing, A History of Pride, and more about you.
Well, you can follow me on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube at Desmond Is Amazing. And you can add me on Snapchat at Desmond_Amazing. And you can find my book by going to my website, DesmondIsAmazing.com. And yeah, be yourself always.
Absolutely. We've had a wonderful time speaking to the author of Be Amazing, A History of Pride. Desmond Is Amazing. Desmond, thank you so much for spending time with us tonight.
Thank you.
Please be sure to join us for the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. We'll have two great authors celebrating their great books. Heather Avis will be here to celebrate her picture book, Different is a Great Thing to Be, a look at kids with Down syndrome. Julie Dinges will also be here to celebrate Search for the Scepter. That's the next episode of the Reading with Your Kids podcast. Want to thank the folks who made today's show so wonderful. Of course, want to start by thanking our guest. Desmond Is Amazing. Be sure to check out Be Amazing, A History of Pride. Also want to thank Ricardo Gattas Moras. Be sure to check out The Rainbow Bee. Also want to thank my team, Alejandra Doherty, Fatima Khan, Justina Thompson, Helen Frazier. I want to thank my beautiful wife for all the support she gives me. We all want to thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. And as always, thank you so very much for taking the time to make the world a better place by reading with your kids. I'll be looking for you in the next edition of the Reading with Your Kids podcast.